Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny Metcalf at the State Board of Education and Early Childhood. As I'm glancing through the names, I see quite a few of our brand new programs that were just funded this year. So I want to say welcome to all of you, and to those of you who've been with us often. Thank you for coming back. For those of you who are new, I just want to make sure Cindy mentioned that this will be on the YouTube channel. The other sessions that we've already had this year are also on the YouTube channel. So definitely go back and check those out. I also want to give another plug. Some of you heard me say this already for our in-person Preschool for All Administrator Conference that we're going to be having on April 22nd and 23rd. All of the ISB team will be there. All of the consultants will be there. We really hope that we could have representation from all of our programs, at least one administrator from every program. The registration link is live on the ECPL website, and you may have also received that via email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to ECPL or ISB about that, but we are super excited about that and hope to see all of you there in person. Now, for today's session is about defining and understanding multi-tiered systems of support in our PFA and PFAE environments. We are lucky to have us for twice in a row now, Dr. Antoinette Taylor, who if you have not met her, you will be very excited to meet her today and hear from her. So, Dr. Taylor, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much for that. Listen, everyone, what is going on with this weather? So I want to let you know right now, you may hear a little like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer stuffiness. I've got my throat coat here. I've got my tea, my throat coat lozenges. I've got my Kleenex between the shoveling to get in front of the snow and the winter weather. It did kind of, I'm fending off some things, but I'm so glad to be here today. So thank you for that plug, Jenny. Please cough, go somewhere and stay away until 2:30. So I'm really happy to be here today. And you all have been jumping in the chat. I've been looking at your current roles and where you are currently practicing. And as Cindy and Jenny both already said today, welcome. I'm just so excited to see 128 participants who are here with us. That just speaks to the need for understanding about MTSS, everyone. And we're going to do our very best to talk to you about that today. And you're going to hear me say this often, utilize that chat because we're going to save the chat. We're going to be going over it to prepare for the administrators forum. We know that just like any other subject matter, a 90-minute session is just enough to kind of give you some contextual background. We don't expect you to go and like full-fledged implement MTSS in your programs or your districts or in your classrooms. But this is just, again, give you some contextual background, help answer some of those questions that have been lingering in the air. And then when we come together for the conference in April, we'll be able to hear your successes, your challenges. Well, I thought about that after the session, went back and tried some things and it worked great, or here's where we met some snags. So just kind of ride along with us. There's so much information that I have for you all today. Here's a little bit of information about myself. If you've been with us before, been with me before, you've seen this little blip there. And as Jenny said, I'm so passionate about MTSS. Really, since No Child Left Behind, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, I've just been like in Washington, D.C., and with legislators in Springfield and speaking about this really wonderful framework that's kind of been misunderstood along the way for so long. And of course, now we reference it as MTSS. If you could do me a favor and jump in the chat and let me know, were you with us on November 8th? Because the truth is, this session was born from that session. As we were looking over the notes from the chat, there was a lot of people that were saying, we're confused. Like, should we be doing the pyramid model to deal with suspension and expulsion, or should we be doing MTSS? And so today, what we're really going to do is help us all understand that there's really not an either or. It's this and that through synthesizing our practices through literally the word, you're using the word to define the word. The phrase is multi-tiered system of supports. So we're going to figure out how to make a system of all of our evidence-based practices and evidence-based supports, which one of them is what? The pyramid model, National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, that we have been using in our state for many, many, many years, not just our state, but around the country, to try to give our teachers and our families tools to address challenging behavior that leads to children being suspended and expelled. So I'm going to jump in the chat real quick and see how many of you were here. Great. So a lot of you like, yes, yes. Hey, Kathy Vickers. Yes, yes, I was here. I think I saw Kim Nelson in there. Yes, yes, yes. And again, for those of you that were not, you're not going to be lost at all. As they've already said, all of these sessions are housed on the YouTube, so you can go back and look at. And then I actually encourage you to do it because we want to continue to make sure that we correctly talk about any practice that we're using, any law that we're trying to understand, and certainly with the expulsion law, the early childhood education expulsion law, birth to 5, and all that's happening with the PDG birth to 5 grant in our state right now. We're trying to recuperate from COVID and RSV and just so many things. We want to make sure that we have the right information so that this is the administrators forum, right? You are on here today, not only to have this lens as an administrator, but so that you can know how to help your staff as your staff is teaching the students and working with your families. So please make sure if you weren't here, you're not going to be lost at all. But I do want you to go back and you can just put that on in the background while you're working, in your office and just play that so you can take some notes and then bring them with you again when you come to the conference. So for those of you that were here in November, this is a welcome back for you. And for those of you that were not, again, please jump in there. And when you get an opportunity, play that suspension and expulsion webinar in your background while you're just working in your office one day. Okay, as Cindy said, we're going to be utilizing the chat a lot, simply for a couple of reasons. With so many people on, we don't want to miss everyone, and we know that you're going to be having questions. So I'm going to try to look at the chat as much as possible, answer the questions that we can today, and then anything that we miss, as I said before, I'm going to save it, cross-reference it with the notes from the suspension and expulsion, and try to be ready to answer any ongoing questions you might have as we come together for the conference. So listen, when we were growing up, our families used to tell us there's no such thing as a dumb question. So ask, 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 ask again. Jump in that chat and ask again. And we're operating by the Vegas principle. So what happens in the webinar on January 17th stays here, except for our collective impact of practices. And then earlier today, you should have received an email from Karen Admonson that had a handout of a reflection journal. And I called it a journal because it's really just like a 2-page document. But I wanted us to have an opportunity as we go through this day. We're going to be doing some stopping and thinking so you can take notes, not only for today, but then to kind of carry with you when you go back and start thinking about how you will be talking about this with your teams and your staff. And that's all staff, your teachers, your paraprofessionals, for our PFAE programs, our family support specialists. As I said before, what we see in the chat, stories are private, practices are shared. So that's what I call the Vegas principle, right? So some of us might be putting some things in the chat that are very specific to our programs. That's kind of like, hey, we're just keeping that between ourselves. But then when we start talking about the solutions, we want collective impact and we want to share that. So again, stories are private, practices are shared. And you're just going to jump right in that chat. Here's our first one. Briefly share what knowledge you hope to take with you today. go ahead and put that in the chat. And we've got a lot to cover, so as you all are typing, I will be moving on and then coming back to look and see what you said. But in the chat, just briefly, 1 or 2 words, quick sentence, share what knowledge you hope to take with you today. Okay, better documentation. And I saw something there that I wanted to go back to. You all are really bringing them in. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Michelle. Oh my goodness. I'm going to spell your last name so I don't murderize it. S. Subkoviak. In the chat, if you wouldn't mind, how to include PS into our current, and I don't know if that's pyramid system, but if you could just clarify that for me, Michelle, in the chat, when you said better understanding of how to include PS into our current MTSS, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much. How to document. Hey, Ladsy, how are you? That's our specialized services. Okay. A lot of people talking about documentation. Documentation. Okay. Getting a better idea of implementation of the pyramid model and documentation. Okay. Thank you for that, Stephanie. As we are calling them toolkits and more assessment tools that are easily appropriate to monitor progress. Hi, Betsy. I know that name from somewhere. I can't it'll catch up with me in a minute, but Betsy, I know your name from somewhere, so help me figure it out. All right, let's jump right in. A lot of your questions I think are going to be answered as we go through this. Hey, Kathy Villano, how are you? Happy New Year, honey. Okay, this is going to be broken down into 3 parts, sort of. Okay. Thank you, Betsy. Yeah, we've got some catching up to do on our network there. So yeah, thank you. I knew your name from somewhere. Okay, this is going to be done in 3 parts. We're going to talk about defining, understanding, and learning environments, which was right in the title, defining MTSS. And we're going to do that by talking about how it started. And here is where so many myths and misconceptions need to be dealt with. And then the understanding is figuring out how it's going. And then our promise to you in the title was, and so what does this look like for Preschool for All and Preschool for All, expansion learning environments? And that's all of them. So any of our colleagues who are on today, who are community-based programs, if you are a parochial program and part of your day is funded by PFA, PFAE, when we say all, we really do mean all, okay? So let's jump right in. MTSS, how it started. Well, it started as most things do, starts with a law somewhere, right? That someone says, we've got to do something about something that's going on. And if it's a federal law, it's something that has been going on in our country that Congress has had enough advocacy to say, okay, we're going to address this at a federal level. So in our country, that federal level and that law is No Child Left Behind. Okay, and I'm not going to read this to you, read every single thing to you, but I think it's so important to know that contextual background, especially if, if we may be new to the system, we might have just graduated a couple of years ago, or sometimes we've been in the system for a while and we've only heard snippets about a certain practice, but we don't know where it came from. And it makes it feel like, gosh, there's always something new that we're having to try to figure out. Well, guess what? No Child Left Behind came to us, and within No Child Left Behind, this language you see before you is written. that by the 2010-2011 school year, which means by July 1, 2010, every building that was publicly received public funding, every state, every local education agency had to implement the use of a process that determines, and I underline those words, how a child responds to interventions. We know that word, respond to interventions. That was in the federal law. Prior to that, however, IDEA specifically talked about how to determine whether a child has a specific learning disability. And within that law said they may use a process that determines if the child responds to basic research-based intervention as part, not instead of, but as part of a comprehensive evaluation. So now for those of us that know, IDEA, it's been way overdue and being reauthorized, but IDEA has been with us for a long time, right? So in the Individuals with Disability Education Improvement Act, we see this language. And so that language was really borrowed from No Child Left Behind to get us to that response to intervention, right? This is also in the law. The tenets of RTIs within IDEA, it literally says a multi-tiered approach to providing instruction at increasing levels of intensity, progress monitoring, and data analysis, right? So some of your questions really are being answered here. It's a multi-tiered approach to instruction. What's a multi-tiered approach? Differentiating, scaffolding, developmentally appropriate practices, right, that come to us using our standards. It's multiple ways to approach instruction, and that increasing levels of intensity literally means how do we take our practice as an educator or as a member of staff, and then we intensify, or we know this from the compliance checklist, we individualize it to meet the needs of each of our students. And then documentation, everyone, it's not a big fancy thing. It's literally, and we know this, right? We've been doing DRDP, my teaching strategies. You may be doing ELA, core. It's what did you see, right? It's your anecdote. I taught this. I expected to hear children, see children do something. I expected this outcome. And then I document it by either an anecdote, by a picture. I take a quick note. I put it on a Post-it. That's literally what the documentation is. And then when I look at that, I can monitor the progress or lack of progress of my students. And data, all that means is data analysis. It just means I look at all of my data, which could be qualitative, my anecdotal notes, and I start trying to analyze it by seeing if there is a problem for a child or a group of children and making a determination of what I'm going to do with it. And all of that came from what's written in the law. Now, for IDEA, they also had to say, as we look at this, we are ruling out, does a child need to be referred to make sure that there's nothing cognitively or by mental impairment, mental health that is impeding the child's ability to learn. And that was, of course, talking about specific learning disability, but anything in that 13 category spectrum under IDEA. Now, it also talked about, as I said before, the specific learning disability and where that is in the law, right? Now, where we got a little stuck, everyone, are these words: scientific research based, must document. Must document the student does not, look at that word right there, does not achieve adequately or make sufficient progress in state approved grade level standards. What that did was cause a little bit of like, okay, wait a minute, research based, What does that mean? Intervention. We need to be doing something. Oh, we need to see everywhere the child is not progressing, right? And so, as the federal law said this needed to happen by July 1, 2010 of the 2010-11 school year, states all across the country were doing what? Figuring out what does this law mean and how we will have to implement it. So by the law, our state and every other state had to submit an RTI plan as part of the No Child Left Behind plan. It had to go up to the Department of Ed by January 1. It had to be approved, or as well as it was submitted, or they came back and said, oh, make a couple of changes here. Our state did that along with everyone else, and here's the timeline. No Child Left Behind, IDEA, everyone had to get their plan submitted up to the Department of Ed by 2008. By 2009, the state board said to every district, this is our approved plan. Now it is your job, district, to spread the wealth of this plan throughout your district. Do trainings, professional learning, let everyone know what the plan looks like, what we've agreed to do with the Department of Ed, and how this will look like in our state, so that by what? July 1, 2010-11, Illinois would be able to be in compliance with the federal law. So now, what does that have to do with early childhood? Illinois was on it, you all. Looking at this category by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, Illinois quickly realized, wait a minute, when you're talking about early childhood education, yes, the law is K-12, but look at the way there is an umbrella between pre-K, kindergarten, and third grade. There is an overlap, right? So Illinois is one of the first states that said, we're going to deal with MTSS in Illinois in early childhood. And that place really is through ECPL. Now, you may know it as Early Childhood Professional Development under the former program director, Brian Mahalski, and it has continued very fervently, I might say, under the directorship of the current program director, Cindy Berry. There is an early childhood MTSS consortium. Many of these webinars and professional learning opportunities around MTSS that's specific to what? Developmentally appropriate practices for preschool for all expansion, children that are ages 3 through 5, those children who are going into kindergarten. What does it look like to build these tiered system of support, or in that earlier on, responsive intervention practices in early childhood, so that as we send children off to kindergarten, we know how they learn best, we know what support systems they need, their families need. We have evidence-based practices that we can put in that transition portfolio that goes along with them. So we're blessed, like pat yourself on the back, Illinois. Illinois has always looked at, when it was RTI and then MTSS, through the lens of starting from pre-K all the way up. Illinois was also in the forefront of recognizing that there might be some misconceptions in the phrasing of, okay, well, RTI means you have to wait and document how a child responded to intervention as it relates to a comprehensive evaluation for a child that we're ruling out a disability. Illinois in 2009, as it was creating its RTI plan, put this into action. It's in the Educational Rights and Responsibilities. They literally put a statement in there about understanding RTI, and this is it, and this is it. So Illinois has been very progressive, I might say, in how we have dealt with RTI in our state. And this is what that timeline looks like, right? So the Council for Exceptional Children, they were looking at the law, and they were hearing from their members, wait a minute, our members are telling us that plans are being written that are saying referrals will be delayed or denied. Illinois was right behind that. And then look who followed suit. The Department of Ed sent out a Dear Colleague letter in 2011, November of 2011, because they got enough of a concern where they sent out a department letter to every state education agency saying we're very, very concerned that children are being delayed a referral or denied a referral, either because people they're saying we haven't done RTI or we are doing RTI. But look, Illinois was in the forefront of that. This is what that letter states. I'm excited about this letter because it has stood the test of time of every administration from 2011 until now. So that's the Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Biden administration. They look at these Dear Colleague letters and then they solidify and they literally say, this is still relevant today. And just even recently, the Department of Ed put all of these letters back out to say, hey, we love MTSS. It's so important that we use MTSS as our a framework, but these are things that we have to remember. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. So why did they do that? Because of all this default terminology, right? With RTI, we were hearing things like, oh, that's an RTI kid. That's an RTI. We have an RTI room. That's a tier 1 student, tier 2 student, tier 3 student. And those were all default terminology that came from a default understanding about response to intervention, right? So, how do we get there? The unfortunate consequence of good intentions. One of the culprits, everyone, was the word intervention. Now, years ago, I'm kind of dating myself, there was a trend called staging an intervention, right? Maybe we had a friend or a loved one that was involved with drugs, or they were involved with drugs, alcohol. You all might remember this. And we would stage an intervention, right? That word intervention made it seem like something big and major needed to happen, right? And that major thing happened and it led to progress. So one of the culprits was the word intervention. By accident, we started focusing on, well, what's an intervention? What's scientific base? Instead of focusing on, oh, we're educators. We provide instruction. Instruction is the intervention. When our teachers show up, that is the intervention. When administrators show up, that is the intervention. When you have ECPL doing professional learning and having an Illinois EC MTSS committee consortium, that is the intervention. Good instruction is always the intervention. But that word really threw us, everyone. Look at this definition of intervention, though, that I pulled from Webster's. You take action to affect an outcome of something. Another definition from Oxford, when you look at this, it makes it easier to see like, oh, that word intervention, it comes across with great intensity because of the way it's written in the law, but it's really just what, as an educator, we would normally be doing anyway, where we're just documenting it. Same thing you do every day when you're documenting for your checkpoint periods, right? Here's some other culprit words: response, scientific base. And here's what we found in working with the Department of Education. The problem was across the country, state education agencies had developed their own policies. And when they gave those policies to local education agencies, which is your district, or if a community-based program, the director, everyone was kind of making their own interpretations. And then, honest to goodness, sometimes even within a district, within a school, from building to building, the procedures were really not synthesized and not systemic. So you kind of had everybody interpreting and doing things their own way, but with good intent. What was that intent? We have to figure out how to marry the law, No Child Left Behind, which says we have to do these scientific-based research interventions, and IDEA that says you've got to include this process as part of your comprehensive evaluation process. So the intent was good. We just got thrown off a little bit, but help was on the way. Nationally, the Division of Early Childhood, of the Council for Exceptional Children, NHSA, and I love the fact that our NHSA was involved in this, and NAEYC came together and said, you know what? We are going to put together a paper that is going to help the early childhood community understand what this looks like. And by these three organizations coming together, they wanted it to be very clear. This is for all children, birth, really, well, the law says K-12, but again, you know, in early childhood, we're always above the curve before anyone anyway. We were the ones saying this really is an early childhood initiative. We should be doing this at the ground up, not pushing down. So we had the community based, we had NAEYC, and that DEC was there to give that voice to. And this is what it looks like when it comes to specialized services. That paper was released in 2013, trying to help us deal with, well, wait a minute, what about the federal law and specialized services and general education services, and then to throw in a monkey wrench, suspensions and expulsions and managing challenging behavior was, we were having such a groundswell. And now it's like, well, wait a minute, am I talking about behavior? Am I talking about academics? Which one am I supposed to be dealing with? All of these things were happening around RTI, okay? You can see this is great information. You can see that, oh, this is how it started. And you might be able to see, oh, I can see now how things might have gotten a little bit off kilter. So we're going to take a minute, write some notes in your reflection journal about defining MTSS. And then in the chat, share an aha, share an uh-oh, or share a huh in the chat. And I'm going to stop talking and give everyone a minute to write. I see that, L. Rogers. Our very next slide is going to talk about scientific research base and how we try to help everyone understand the development of that idea. Mhm. Keep them coming. I'm seeing them coming in. I'm literally talking, going to give a good 60 seconds to do this. Shalise Palmer, you can now be like my co-facilitator because we're literally going to talk about that. Not only the children being in boxes, we kind of put ourselves in a box there too. Okay, Kirsten Williams, but then what? Like, okay, I've documented all of this, but then what? Um, the then what I would say is really the same thing as what happens when you do your interim checkpoints, your checkpoints for my teaching strategies or DRDP, for whatever authentic evidence-based assessment you're using. When you put that information in and then you get that spread of what your children in your classroom look like, the what then is then, especially administrators, right, because this is the administrators forum, the what then is the pressing pause to say, okay, let's talk about what this data is trying to tell us about our program. The what then can sometimes be, this data is telling us we need to do more. Let's do some professional learning around lesson planning. Is our data telling us that some of our children are struggling when it comes to math? Is our data telling us we might have an attendance problem? The what then is always informed by what that data that you got from that authentic tool that you use. And then the pressing pause is it's imperative. If we just collect it and go on, we're doing a disservice to ourselves first, and then to the children. The what then, and I love that question. The what then is always, we've got this information, we know we're instructing. The what then is, what are we going to do about what this says? Do we need to talk more about differentiating instruction in our building or our program? Scaffolding. Do we need to just sit down and press pause and talk about our specialized services program? Does everybody understand the process here? Hey, does everyone even have the IEPs, know how to read and understand the IEPs of our children? Multilingual learners. The what then is always informed by the data, and the documentation literally is what you're already doing on a general basis anyway, to help inform our instruction. I love this. I can't wait to really be able to go back and look at this. But look, y'all, just making my little cough go away. Take one sip of tea and then I'm going to move on. Okay, so you all have it, right? You all have it. This is really exciting and impressive. So now let's move on to how it's going. So how it's going is ESSA. Every Student Succeeds Act. And I apologize, I should have written that out. You know, we have so many alphabet soup acronyms in education. We're truly not satisfied unless we have enough acronyms for something. ESSA, everyone stands for Every Student Succeeds Act. So, L. Rogers, I love that statement. Every Student Succeeds Act and ESSA and MTSS. That's how it's going. We learned from No Child Left Behind that our good intentions, right, got a little misconstrued by language. Okay, remember that interventions, response, scientific research based. We learned our lesson, and as the Every Student Succeeds Act was being written, we replaced it with evidence-based practices. You saw that slide that said, through the Department of Education and through the State Board of Education, you know, and consultants like myself, I think Jenny, Cindy, we're all looking at, well, wait a minute, all these different interpretations. And the reason that happened, everyone, is because the wording was there in the law, but it wasn't really well defined. And so when the opportunity came to reauthorize No Child Left Behind, we learned from that mistake and replaced scientifically based research with evidence based, but then took it one step further. We defined it. So in the law, it defines evidence based practice as this. It's kind of like when you look at the standards, our IEL, Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, and you look at that goal, right? The goal is really broad, and it could be easy for one classroom or one building to look at a broad goal and interpret it differently. So then you look at the standard, which kind of chunks it down a little bit more. But when you get to that benchmark makes it so that we can all understand, oh, this is what that broad goal means. It means a student will understand a 1, 2, or 3-step direction. It's pretty easy to come up with an agreement on what 1-step direction means. So in the law, we wanted it to be well defined to get us out of that, but we're trying to figure out what an intervention is. What is scientific based? Is this scientific based? All that was answered for us with ESSA. When that happened, you all, it's like the door of learning opened up for us. We now were able to look at the intent, and the true intent of response to intervention as it was written, even in No Child Left Behind, was this: a flexibility to really be able to address how students learn and how teachers respond to when students learn well and when they don't. So under ESSA, we have the ability to do that. Look, I'm just getting all excited because this is when this is what we're trying to get to, right? It's all of our students. We're not focused on, okay, but the law said the students who are not progressing, where are those students? It's like child find, child find, child find. What about our high performing students? What about our multilingual learners? What about our students who are twice exceptional? They meet the criteria for services under IDEA or 504 plan. And we look at them when it comes to how their domains of development, and in certain domains of development, they are way above our widely held expectations. Look what ESSA did. It took MTSS and it said, we can align our curriculum across general education, special education. Talked about those things like mental and behavioral health very positively, right? And then talked about this can never be a one and done. Did we do the session? Yes. When did we do it? In August. What's our check-in procedure? Because ongoing professional learning is so important. And Learning Forward talks about that all the time. Did you just do something once? That's not enough. Even with professionals such as ourselves, you need a refresher. And administrators, I'll just kind of throw this in. It doesn't mean that you have to have everybody sit down for the same professional learning all the time. You yourself can differentiate. When you do your teacher evaluations, whether you're using the Danielson framework, if you're from Chicago, you're using REACH. When you're looking at your class reports for our colleagues that are in Chicago or our community-based Head Start colleagues, if you're looking at your Eckers 3 reports, that can tell you what professional learning you need in your building and who needs it so that you can even differentiate. The whole process is that now MTSS kind of it righted the ship, so to speak, of the good intentions of response to intervention that by default became a deficit-based model to now it is an asset-based model because the wording says evidence-based practices do what? Lead to and sustaining student outcomes, improving student achievement, and the learning throughout the learning environment. So now we can dispel all of this. Oh, it's not a vehicle for children to get into special education. Doesn't replace referral and evaluation or assessment. It's not for the clinicians or the case managers to do. We were able to really look at MTSS as it's defined in ESSA and shift from this default language to this. All of our students across the learning environment so that we get this. In response to MTSS and Every Student Succeeds Act, as I said before, we went back and reviewed what do we need to say about this when it comes to specialized services. In 2016, OSEP wrote a letter that was specific to preschool. Now, this is important to us because remember that K-12, ESSA is that K-12, we were still saying all along in Illinois and even really across the country, this is also an early childhood. It starts with early childhood, as does everything. And so here, when the Department of Education came out with that RTI and preschool memo, it just solidified even more all that we were saying, and it just joined hands with that whole piece around, yes, we know that MTSS is good for in early childhood, but these are just some things we want to remember. Illinois, again, pat ourselves on the back because of Every Student Succeeds Act, really went back and looked over everything we had in our state, updated the rights and responsibilities, changed the language, and I was blessed to be asked to write with the editors on this particular chapter. So we went in and changed all that language from RTI to MTSS so that it would be in line with ESSA and that it would be specific to what it is we're trying to tell families and educators when it comes to referral and evaluation process. Illinois, pat ourselves on the back again. We have one definition that is used in Illinois for MTSS from pre-K to grade 12. Nationally, the Division of Early Childhood went back and looked at the paper that I talked to you about before, the RTI paper, the joint paper done by NHSA, NAEYC. Now, you don't see those two organizations here, but let me just share with you, in 2017, DEC went back and had meetings with NHSA and NAEYC and said, hey, we want to revise the paper so that it is in alignment with Every Student Succeeds Act. NHSA, NAEYC gave the thumbs up for DEC to go ahead and do this. And so this position paper was written. I was blessed to be a planner for this as well as a writer. Look what's in the paper. It explicitly calls out early childhood education and care so that we are very specific that it is for all of our colleagues. This is the breakdown of the revised paper. The specificity around early care and education. We talk about misconceptions. See, look what all we learned from No Child Left Behind. Explicit around multilingual learners, explicit around students with disabilities. We really tried to deal with the triangle. It talks about 4 key practices, and then the future of early childhood MTSS in early care and education. Now, I do want to let you all know that you're going to have a link that's going to have this paper and all of this. You're going to get this link actually today while we're on today. You're going to get it so that you don't have to figure out, well, where's she talking about? Where is it? There's an app for that, or Cindy, should I say, there's a website for that. ECPL is taking care of it, and you're going to get that link for a little bit of our third part of this. You're going to get that link to try to help us do what you're going to be doing in your reflection journal as we start synthesizing our practices. So that's what happened on a national level. And then you all, I just got to take a sip of tea because I get so emotional. In July of 2022, the Department of Education put out a policy statement of positive, proactive approaches to supporting children with disabilities, a guide for stakeholders. I was actually in DC. I was doing a little, every year I do like a little snippet in DC where I'm there for a while. I was actually there when this came out. Look what the paper said, you all. Using an evidence-based approach to support and respond to students' needs, a culturally and linguistically responsive, multi-tiered system of supports is a comprehensive prevention framework designed to, it's like, I gotta just calm down. Look at all that in there. Development, social, emotional, academic, behavioral outcomes, using a continuum of evidence-based strategies. I'm not done yet. Their paper, the guidance says it does what? MTSS focuses on meeting the needs of all children. And then it explicitly says what? Allows schools and early childhood programs to customize and organize practices. I don't know if Cindy remembered this. I actually called Cindy from DC. It's like, Cindy, I'm in Washington and you'll never guess what happened. I was like, what's going on? I said, the Department of Ed has literally just released a paper saying the things you've been pushing and, advocating for all of these years. The Department of Ed, they heard you, Cindy, it's right there. So we were literally in DC jumping up and down. DEC was there, Peggy Kemp was there, having that recognition within this broad document from the Department of Ed. It was just everything that we needed because it's breaking it down. It's database. It's for early childhood. It allows you to customize instruction, organize. Ooh, and that organize, that's putting the system in the tiered supports. What tiered supports? The support you're using for challenging behavior, such as the pyramid model. The support you're using for how do you implement your curriculum, whether it's creative curriculum, whether it's a big day, whatever curriculum you're using. How do we organize these practices and make a system of them? And then it talks about data-driven decision-making and evidence-based approaches. What have we been talking about for the past years, especially in Illinois, inequities? How can we address these long-standing inequities? By synthesizing the multiple tiered supports that we are using on a daily basis. And guess what else it does? Not only does it address inequities, not only does it address achievement, it's going to help make sense of practices for our teachers, your teachers who are looking at you every day saying, I'm doing my best, I'm trying my best. It's like I'm at my wit's end. I just don't even know what to look at, what to do anymore. We're going to take some time now, write in your journals, do the same thing, go in the chat. Okay, while you all are writing, and please do keep writing, I want to go back to, Dina, your comment, your I just lost it, but I saw in your comment you were talking, you had a from the defining, and you were saying, there it is. There has been some questioning on who is responsible for implementing. So I want to preface this by saying this. We live in a state where the State Board of Education gives a lot of autonomy to local education agencies to determine how to travel and navigate the outcome. So the state board says, hey, you've got to get to this destination. You know your constituency, you know your staff, you know your families. We trust you to determine how to navigate to get there. So you might be in a district that has said, you know, maybe we have an MTSS specialist or we have an intervention specialist, okay? And they are providing that who was responsible for implementing. To that, I would say this, and I think next month you're going to have an inclusion administrators forum. When you talk about implementing, think about instruction. So you might be in a district where they say, we've got intervention, we have behavior interventions, we might have reading specialists. Those are people that are coming in and they could be fooling out, which, you know, we don't necessarily encourage that, but if the district has figured out, okay, this works best for us, they might be looking at data and saying, okay, these particular children need this kind of support, and we're going to provide it for them in this environment, if that's what the district is doing. But just like anything else, where does instruction take place and who provides that instruction? And think about Eckers 3. Look at this, you all, look at this. I don't even have to get up from my desk. Whoop, here's my Eckers 3 book, right? Eckers 3 explicitly says, we don't think of staff as the teacher. We think of staff as any adult that is regularly involved in the teaching of children. So any adult that's regularly involved with the child. So when you think about who is implementing, it should be who? The teacher in the classroom. If there's a classroom assistant, that person. If you happen to have dedicated assistants in the classroom due to a child's IEP, everyone is responsible for implementing the curriculum, understanding the standards. And so we would also want everyone to understand what? Differentiating, scaffolding, small groups. What does it look like when children are having their choice time, which I like to call their independent learning time? What does it look like for a classroom assistant or myself as a teacher or even now we're really encouraging related services personnel, do those speech language and OT services in the classroom, include it with everything that's going on so that the teacher can see, the classroom assistant can see, so that when you're not in there, what's happening? That support, that system of support that child needs, it continues to happen. So I just wanted to address that because implementing interventions, remember that's instruction. All right. So thank you for putting that out. I'm looking at all the rest of these. You all are just, I'm very excited. Really, really excited. Thank you for all of your input. And now we're going to move on to, okay, what else did MTSS, what else did ESSA bring to MTSS? And this is where I really wanted to get to because that's why you all are here today. How do we create a system in PFA, early childhood education and care through the learning environment? This is how we define a system. Just one way to define it. The operative phrase I love here is parts have to operate as a whole. The parts have to operate as a whole to achieve a common purpose. Let's go back to that OSEP policy paper. I'm going to break this down a little bit. You got data-driven decision-making, evidence-based approaches, long-standing inequities. First thing we're going to do is talk about that data-driven decision-making, and we're going to look at the triangle. Because in order to really be able to use data to inform your practices, you've got to understand where the data came from, where the triangle came from, and how we can, as one of our colleagues said earlier, we don't have to put children in a box by that RTI kid, RTI class, tier 1. All of that came from the well intentions of the triangle. Okay, so let's talk about the triangle. Here's the historical data components of RTI/MTSS. If you've ever been with me before and ever heard me talk about MTSS, you've seen this picture. It's one of my favorite pictures. Which came first, y'all? The chicken or the egg? Which came first? The triangle or the data? The truth is, the triangle was informed by data, right? When the law was being written, when No Child Left Behind was being written, we were looking at data. And that data was telling us how children compared across the country when it came to achievement, not interventions, but achievement. And that data told us 80 to 90% of all children do well. Somewhere in there, about 5 to 10% need that same universal practices, but they needed it in a targeted format. And then somewhere along the way, about 1 to 5% of the children, they need the universal, they need the targeted, and they need some one-on-one from us. And from that, the triangle was born. There is no magic in the triangle. There is even no law in the triangle. So that data could look like this. That data could look like this. It did not have to look like a triangle, but because of the fact that in our country, we were already talking about PBIS, and PBIS was using the green, the yellow, and the red as a triangle when we talked about RTI so that you could try to understand them together. The same kind of triangle, the same coloring was used. But again, let me just go back and show you. When you look at your data, it could look like a pie chart. It could look like a bar graph. It could be your favorite color. It doesn't have to be green, yellow, and red. It could be no colors. Why do we want to break out of that? Because we know that children's development is not stacked. It's very fluid. Therefore, our instruction, our tiered supports, whether it's the pyramid model, you're looking at, i.e., the standards, you're looking at Eckers, whatever you're looking at, it also has to be fluid and move and be permeable, because just like students' development and learning isn't stacked, so must our instruction, so much our lesson planning, so must our IEP writing and implementing, so much our twice exceptional, so must our multilingual learners practices be fluid. And we have to understand that just as independent as they are also interrelated. So that's where that multi-tiered comes from, and then trying to create a system of it. So the fact is, evidence-based practices and supports are in tiers, not children. And because I strongly believe that MTSS really should support staff as well. Children aren't in tiers. Staff are not like, oh, that's a staff. Where did they, when I looked at my Danielson report, where did that staff fall? It's not about where we're going to place children, where we're going to place staff. It's where we're going to place our professional learning. It's where we're going to place our instruction, where we're going to place what we do for children, not the children themselves. Okay, so that's the one thing. Then we talk about evidence-based practices and ESSA. Well, this is what Illinois looks like. And you've seen this if you've ever been with me before when it comes to evidence-based practices. There are a lot of them, you all, a whole lot. And guess what? This is before the pandemic and all the wonderful initiatives that have come to us because of the pandemic, which of course we should have things to address. But this is why you as an administrator and your staff are looking like this. It's a little bit much to take on. Yet, because of the law, we can't get rid of evidence-based practices. And because of what we know when evidence-based practices are implemented to fidelity, we don't even want to get rid of them. But we have to figure out a way to manage them. So here's our problem statement. When evidence-based practices are implemented as separate systems, you can attain it, but we're not able to sustain it. And that's two things, right? We attain it, and it's like, this is great. And then something else happens, and then we lose the ability to sustain to fidelity. So then what happens to the outcomes? We see positive outcomes for children, positive outcomes for families, positive outcomes for educators, burnout for educators, challenging behavior for children. We lose it. This is attainable. It's not sustainable. Remember when you go to the circus and see that person trying to spin plates? Inevitably, they could spin all the plates at one time, but they had to immediately go and remove those plates, because if not, they would start wobbling, right? So the theory of change is we need a comprehensive system to, as the Department of Ed said, organize all of these tiered supports. Evidence-based tiered supports grow from evidence-based practices such as instruction, curriculum, assessment, and ongoing professional learning. So in reality, the tools that you need for a framework that synthesizes your tiered supports, you already have them. What does that look like? It looks like the importance of a system. What you see on your left, it's a bike. I don't know who could ride that bike, but that is a bike. But the importance of a system is when you put it all together. Those separate pieces are so fundamental, but the strength in those pieces comes in being a system that allows me to have a bike and now I can move forward. So let's start doing some examining. And this is the part I've been really wanting to get to. And we got some good time here, everyone. I want everyone now, see these plates in your reflection journal? Start naming these plates. And I also want you to put them in the chat. Okay? Name each of your evidence-based practice plates. Okay? These are the plates that your staff is trying to spin. And as an administrator, these are the plates that you're trying to help your staff manage. Think of all your evidence-based practices. Put them in your journal and get them in the chat because we want everything in there, everyone. And don't leave anything out. And I'm being quiet on purpose, everyone. I I think I told Cindy when she approached me about doing this, I want us to try to it MTSS, again, Learning Forward has told us, and we know this. This is just to give you all some contextual background. When I learned about RTI, I was in DC for a week, sun up to sundown every day, talking about RTI. When ESSA was created, same thing with MTSS. It takes a long time to really understand this and really be able to consult around it and implement it. But I wanted you all to get to this moment where we can start doing what you are doing now. Yes. Individualization on lesson plans. Chelsea, Brigance, Kristen, dial 4. So, okay, what's dial 4? What's TS? Dial 4 is what? Universal screening, ICDs, universal screenings, creative curriculum. Yes, that's our evidence-based practice. Portfolio collections, Katie, yes. DRDP, Kate Clemson, Danielson framework, absolutely. ASQSC, understanding from staff administration. Yeah, that's an evidence-based practice. Social emotional, Melissa, thank you. I know your name too, Melissa. Social emotional instruction. Second steps, paths, need to ID and implement early numeracy instruction. Yep, Linda, woo, woo, woo. Spoken word, pyramid model. Whoever our Rose, is that Rose Fisher, who put time in there, like you get the Nobel Peace Prize, because how many times do we say there is just not enough time in the day to do all these things that we need to do? And your staff says it to you all the time, right? High scope, there you go. Hey, Kim. Kim, I think we have a meeting today. I think I'll see you in a few minutes after this. Just saw that email, honey. So I I got it all up here, Kim. High scope, yes. Core assessment. Okay. Families, Yasmin Nambo. Families. Hey, Miss Brandy, how are you? I saw your little comment about creating a manual. Thank you. You need to email me, Miss Brandy. I love that. Who said that? And the list goes on. Okay. So now our next thing is all of those things that you said, we're going to make a system of it. Where are the common threads? Okay. You got Eckers 3. Sorry, Jenny, but some of us were talking about monitoring. We got our monitoring letter, right? Sorry, Jenny. We don't look forward to monitoring, but with MTSS, you can. I want us not to look at monitoring and Eckers 3 as that, oh, we got to do this because No, it's not about monitoring. It's about our qual. This is telling us how we can have quality practices in our buildings. This is telling us, oh yeah, relationships. The pyramid model talks about relationships. IELDS talks about relationship. Look at, watch this. Got my Ecker's book. When I don't even have to get out of my chair, here's my IELDS book. Here's my NCPMI. Here's my NAEYC, developmentally appropriate. I can't consult with no matter who I'm consulting with. I can't plan. All of these things are my common threads. That's how you make a system, everyone, of all of these things. Okay? You saw family engagement, all of those things you said, monitoring. It's inevitable. We know if you have a grant, you're going to be monitored. That's part of the foundation of your system. What we want to do is take all of those tiered supports and then we want to create a system. In other words, take the parts of the bike and put it together so that we can do what? Staff, stakeholders, students, family, community, practice, chronic absenteeism, truancy, all of that. That's how you would make a common thread, everyone. This is what you're going to get. And I'm actually going to stop sharing real quick so that I can put this in the chat for you all. This, what I was showing you on the screen was actually ECPL has created a website that will house all of these resources that we've been talking about, everything you need as far as, I'm putting it in there right now. I want you all to take a few minutes to look at it. That will help you have the resources you need for multilingual learners, the special students, special populations. It has free resources for multilingual learners. If you click on that link, it'll take you directly to Early Choices that gives you information about inclusion, about working with children with disabilities. Also, that paper that we talked about from the Department of Ed, it's all in there. And as you all are do that, I want you to go ahead and look at this for a few minutes while I'm talking about it. I want to address Fonda Reed. I hope I said your name right. I could just like, please, 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 I hope you all are coming to this, the conference in April. Tap me on the shoulder. Hey, Dr. Antoinette, our community-based programs are dealing with DCFS licensing. Then you have preschool for all funding. Then you have Head Start frameworks. If anybody in the world needs to synthesize their tiered supports, it is Head Start community-based programs. Because with so much coming at you, how can we possibly, if we don't synthesize and integrate the practices, right? It's hard to do. And inevitably, plates begin to what? They will fall. Plates will definitely begin to fall. And then we lose our teachers. They get burned out. We have challenging behavior. Now, I'm going to go back to this here. Okay, and I highlighted social emotional behavior and support. Here is going to be that link that takes us all the way back to why was MTSS a catalog like born out of the suspension and expulsion? Going to talk about that. We know about National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, and if you're like me, you were around when Vanderbilt, like I literally went to the horse's mouth and was trained on this product from the people that created it, Vanderbilt University, right? We now know it as National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. We know that the pyramid model, it is evidence-based, it is good for us, it works for students. But then look at this. This, what you see before you, was written in 2003. Teachers are saying they're ill-equipped to meet the needs of children. I just got this EC Journal last week, 2024. How is it that the same thing is being said? Is it that the pyramid model isn't any good? Of course it's not. We know that it is an evidence-based practice, and we know that it's good because it stood the test of time. It stood the test of time from CEPHL to TAXI to Pyramid Model Consortium to National Center for Pyramid Model Innovation. So we know that it's not the evidence-based practice. If we do a system check, is it the environment? Is it the students? Is it the staff? Why isn't our staff able to do this fidelity to practice? It is because of that problem statement. The theory of practice is that they're trying to ride a bike without all the pieces together. So it's not, do we do the pyramid model or do we do MTSS? It is, you take that pyramid model, there's some assembly required, right? So the theory of, we got the problem statement, which is our theory of practice. You're implementing the pyramid model apart from Eckers 3, apart from your Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, apart from lesson planning, apart from understanding your specialized services. That theory of practice doesn't work. This is our theory of change. We need to synthesize it, right? This is what synthesis looks like. We take those pieces and put them together, but there's some assembly required to do that. And that's the theory of action. So we take that pyramid model and we say, in our foundation of our MTSS framework, we're going to take that entire pyramid model and put it where? In the foundation. We're going to take Eckers 3, right? And we're going to put that in the foundation. We're going to take our Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards, put that in the foundation. Our colleagues from our community-based, we're going to take what? The Head Start frameworks, put that in the foundation. DCFS licensing, put that in the foundation. We're going to take attendance, put that, anything that is crucial to our structure, we're going to synthesize it and put it in the foundation. And so now, y'all, we got some homework. When I see you at the administrators conference, your homework is to go into your buildings, go into your classrooms as administrators, and start thinking about common threads. Put on your synthesizing lens, like, Clark Kent used to put on, and like he could have X-ray vision. Put on your synthesizing practices lens. Start having some conversations with your staff about how we can, all those wonderful practices that you all talked about, how we can create a system. So what does that mean? When your staff is like, well, I know the pyramid model says we have to look at relationships, but I got to do my lesson plan. Okay, what does creative curriculum say? First of all, what do our standards say? How many standards in the Illinois Early Learning and Development talk to us about peer-to-peer with adult response? Understand facial cues. That's all relationship. When we synthesize, what we do is we figure out how to take several things, make them as one, and when we do that one thing well, you build the relationships necessary to implement for your pyramid model. You build the relationships that is within Eckers 3. You build the relationships by using those benchmarks in Illinois Early Learning and Development Standards. Start thinking of all the things that go in your foundation, what they look like, and here's just some ideas. What does it look like, sound like, feel like when you embed them? Your staff can help you start saying, oh, these things are all related. Even with your Danielson for teacher evaluation, or if you're in Chicago and you're using Reach, let that be a part of the conversation too. Oh, lesson planning is a part of the teacher evaluation. Well, it's also a part compliance checklist. That should be in your foundation, right? Look at all those things in the compliance checklist that might match with the pyramid model, that match with your assessment, that match with family engagement. We don't have to do a lot of things well. We just have to figure out how to create a system to do a few things well and let that goodness overflow and spill out onto the children that we're teaching. Think about your non-negotiables. They go in the foundation. Think about all of your students, multilingual learners, students with disabilities, students with 504 plans. What's our table read for students that have an IEP? What's our table read process for students with 504 plans? What about our students who are in temporary living situations? That's your homework, using your reflection journal. Hope to see you at the conference. We have a few more minutes. I want you all to take this opportunity to do one last writing in your journal, one last aha, uh-oh, or huh. Actually share an aha. I'm so grateful that ECPL and Jenny and Cindy and Susie, first of all, contacted me to do this. My heart really goes out as a consultant when it's like, oh my gosh, we're being monitored. Where's the compliance checklist? Did we do all these things? And then it goes in a drawer somewhere and we're not using it to our practice to help us support the children that we know need us. My heart goes out when you hear that. Well, okay, we did the pyramid model. So can we suspend or expel this child now? It means we're missing the point. Well, okay, what's the intervention? We did the intervention. Can they get an IEP? MTSS, this is the way I like to define, as you all are putting your aha moments in the chat. I define MTSS, it's like being on an all-inclusive vacation. RTI, we were on this all-inclusive vacation, but we didn't realize it. Like we were picking and choosing, like, oh, I'm so hungry. I've got to ration what I'm doing. When I'm on an all-inclusive vacation, once I walk on that resort, any meal I want is paid for, any drink I want is paid for, the pool is paid for, the steam room is paid for. That's MTSS. It opens up the flexibility for us to truly engage positively all of our students, all of our staff from a whole school, whole child, whole community perspective. Uh, um, Keep putting those ahas in there. I'm going to turn you over to Jenny, Cindy, and Susie to get your last minute housekeeping. It's been such a pleasure to be with you all today. Again, I am going to save this so I can make sure if we missed any questions so we can go over them and be prepared for April. I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for your time. Off to
Thank you,
Jenny.
Dr. Taylor. You know what? Before Susie, I know Susie has some important announcements, but Dr. Taylor, we should talk about the MTSS series that we have going on through ECPL. So if they go to our MTSS website, the web page, the link that Dr. Taylor gave you, you will see that we are doing a series on MTSS in collaboration with the Illinois MTSS network. And 2 of the sessions have occurred. Those are recorded on our YouTube channel. Tomorrow is session 3, which is on analyzing data, defining problems, discovering successes, and developing action plans as part of a continuous improvement cycle and school improvement plan. You can get all the information on our website, but I just wanted to share that with people before Susie does her last minute
and Cindy, I'm sorry, but that thumbs up, there were some people in the chat like, yeah, we've been coming. They're really good. So woohoo.
And so just for those who weren't aware of it, They can find all of the information on the webpage. If you go to the MTSS webpage and look at upcoming webinars, the series flyer is there with links to register for the upcoming sessions and subsequent sessions. So, okay, turning it over to Susie. Thanks. Thanks.
And
Okay.
Susie,
Dr.
can I
Taylor.
just real quick say one thing? I know
Sure.
that the inclusion one is coming up. I encourage you, if your schedule allow, please do that inclusion administrators forum. Repeatedly, what we hear from the Illinois Principals Association, that they hear from their principals, is that MTSS helps them with inclusion of students with disabilities. We hear that over and over and over. And when I say we, ECPL partners with IPA to do these academies, and over and over and over again, Illinois Principals Association is saying, our principals are telling us, when we look at MTSS and we understand it, it helps us with authentically including children with disabilities. And so you're going to hear those ideas from Ann, I think, next month, and just fold it right into suspension and expulsion at MTSS, you know, and everything we talked about. So I hope you all be able to join whenever that date is going to be next month. Now I'm going to be quiet. Chick-a-lock.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us today. Again, as we've told you, all the recordings are on our ECPL YouTube channel. If you have not yet subscribed to that, you can do so by logging on to the ECPL website and scroll down and select YouTube, and you can subscribe at that website. And then Antoinette already did speak of the next administrator virtual session. That is going to be with Ann Kramer and Talon Tokat with the early choices. And it's entitled Using Federal Guidance to Promote High Quality Inclusion for All Children with Disabilities. That is scheduled for February 26th. It is a Monday. Just to let you know, we try to stick with Wednesdays, but due to the scheduling, we are going to do it on Monday, February 26th. Registration is also available on the ECPL website. As Jenny mentioned earlier, don't forget to mark your calendars for the in-person administrator conference in Champaign, Illinois, which is going to be on Tuesday, April 23rd. And then watch your emails either later today or this evening or tomorrow, and you will be receiving a follow-up email for today's session with a link to the evaluation for you to complete for evidence of completion. So if you do have any additional questions from today's session, feel free to email us at ecpl@cntrmail.org. I'll just type that in. And then we would love to see you at our upcoming sessions. That would be great. We really appreciate all of you participating today. Thanks again, Dr. Taylor.